Rachel, thank you for joining us on New Mexico in Focus today.
So glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
Now, your work with the Carnegie Endowment for National Peace focuses on violence, social change, and conflict. And you've had a global focus. Before we get into the 2020 elections, can you tell me what does it mean when you say political violence or election violence?
Sure, it's a great question. So when we look at this question overseas, what we're looking at are people who are using force, not just actual violence, but intimidation or the threat of violence to influence who has a say in the political process. So it can be at an election, but it can also be at a protest. It can also be whether they have the right to free speech or are worried that if a journalist speaks, they'll be shut down or even killed. So the basic idea is the use of intimidation or force to quiet people who need to speak in a democracy.
And as the 2020 election approached, how did you decide to work together with Amanda Ripley on a guide for journalists to cover conflict elections, especially here in the United States, of all places?
Sure. So internationally, the idea that journalists have a real civic role to play in taking the temperature down, reporting in a way that doesn't add to conflict is very well known. You see that in other countries, but we don't see that here. It's just not a way that journalists think about their role in the United States. And what we were seeing was that the same kinds of conflictual dynamics, high polarization, people arming themselves, a lot of because of COVID, actually, a lot of arms being bought by first-time users because of the coronavirus, but nevertheless worrisome signs we were starting to see in the United States. And I was on a press call where I was explaining the worries and also the ways that we were not so worried. And afterward, got lots of calls from journalists where I recognized the language they were using was exactly the wrong way to talk about it. If we were overseas, it was just what would ignite the problem. And so Amanda Ripley, who's a fabulous journalist, and I said, let's just sit down, take the best practices we know from overseas, import them to the US and help our friends in the US media community understand the role they have to play here and how well they can play it. And I have to say they've done an amazing job so far.
What are the hallmarks of election conflict for you?
So you see a lot of politicians trying to use their base, use intimidation to scare people. We saw some of this before our election during the presidential debate where President Trump told the Proud Boys, a white supremacist kind of gang, to what was it, stand by, stand back and stand by, a very equivocal language that they took in a way that was positive for them. So you see that kind of language overseas. You see people upping the ante on social media, kind of posturing on social media, but that normalizes violence. It makes it seem like something that should be normal in our discourse. It's not. I mean, if you look at Americans across the political spectrum, the vast, vast majority decry violence. They don't want to see it in their election. They don't want to see it in our political process. You only have about 3 or 4% on either side, about the same on either side, saying that it's at all justified. So the goal is to really say, look, those are fringe views. They're going to exist. Any country with this many people is going to have a fringe, but let's not normalize it. Let's not bring it into the mainstream or allow it to be seen as more mainstream by our coverage of it.
Bring out the Proud Boys. And so one of the things I wanted to, that gets me as interesting is that you've had this critical eye for a global perspective and researching so many developing democracies. How has this come back to the United States, especially when we also have a history of political violence, especially in the American South against people of color? I'm thinking the turn of the century from even 100 years ago, right after Red Summer, African Americans faced violence just for the act of registering to vote. Have you made any parallel connections with the history of the United States and what you see in emerging democracies?
Absolutely. I mean, what we see is America thinks of itself as this extremely old democracy, the oldest in the world. And we are. On the one hand, we're the oldest democracy still standing, the oldest constitution, absolutely. But we have never fully integrated a major portion of our population, the African American portion of the population, and to a lesser but significant extent, the Native American portion of our population, which have also had troubles voting. And so, we fought a war over it in the mid 1800s. That's a precursor. You always look for places where there's been political violence in the past to predict it in the future. We did have a civil war that didn't resolve the problem. Very quickly, we had Reconstruction and a turning back of the tide of African-American voting, where you had all these registered voters and then you had almost none. And that lasted through the 60s. And so when I speak about this to a lot of democratic, small d democratic people who are interested in democracy, I say, look, we're the oldest democracy in the world. On the other hand, we're actually no older than a lot of the new democracies that are decolonizing in the 60s, or that are just coming to democracy in the 60s, when we had a major wave of democratizing overseas, because we too are just learning how to integrate major parts of our population. And that fissure is still there. And if you look at where suppression and so on happens, it's still along that same fissure. So in that way, we look a lot more like, say, a Northern Ireland or a South Africa, a highly developed country, a democracy, but nonetheless one that's divided and that needs to learn now how to deal with that divide.
Now, you came up with 10 things that U.S. journalists can learn from colleagues who've covered conflicts in other countries. What are some of those key points?
So I think one of the big ones is to humanize, that when you report on the other side as sort of demonic people that can't be understood, it really helps individuals. It enables violence by helping people separate themselves from the humanity of the other side. A lot of our media stories cover humanization simply by covering a very small personal story, but not connecting it to their beliefs. That's also not particularly helpful. What's useful is to say, here's what the other side is, and here's what they actually believe, and here's why. When you do that, you start to recognize that we are all Americans. We're all stuck in the same country. One hopes stuck in the same country for a long time. And we need to figure out where we actually disagree, where we have different precursors but have levels of agreement, and where we can start finding those areas to come together. So humanization, super important. I've already talked about denormalizing violence. There's also the importance of being really precise in how one talks about groups that are using violence. So instead of saying a far right group or a far left group, to say the Proud Boys or Antifa is important, because a lot of the left, of course, disavows Antifa, really doesn't like what they're doing. A lot of the right thinks very poorly of the Proud Boys. There's no reason to kind of normalize. So very precise language. And there were a slew of others I'm happy to go through.
Now, at the time of this taping, many media outlets had called the presidential race for Joe Biden, and there's still some outstanding races across the country. When you look back, how did the U.S. news outlets do in light of these lessons that you have talked about? What kind of grade would you give us?
So I sit on the National Task Force for Election Crises, and this is a bipartisan group. It includes people like Jim Baker, and it includes people who audit elections for a living. And we've all been talking a lot to the press. And as a task force, we were speaking frequently with the 6 major outlets that call elections and sharing these points with them and so on. I think they did wonderfully, honestly. I think they did really, really good. Maybe I'd give them a B+. I'm perhaps an easy grader, but I think they did very well given the difficulties of the situation and how fast they had to learn. One of the things that Amanda and I wrote about was the importance of always including the denominator, that you always say, here's how many votes have come in, not just the state is leaning red or leaning blue, because we expected a blue shift because of the number of absentee ballots that had been asked for by Democrats. What we were expecting was a lot more red coloring in a state on the day of, but small numbers reporting. And we were worried that that would bring up the temperature. People would feel that the election was being taken as the absentee ballots got counted. That did happen to some extent, but because the press was so good at literally, in some cases, like Fox News actually put the number, 80% of the ballots are in, 75% are in, you could really get a sense of just how far along they were. And so, yeah, I think they did an extremely good job of making sure the American people were ready to know that they were not going to get results on election night, that was not a crisis, that there was no need for those results, that the process has gone pretty about as well as we could possibly hope, honestly, despite all of the chaos that's being created by the narrative that the White House largely has been behind. This was a very free, fair, easy election. We didn't even see the long lines that we've seen at past elections because so many people voted early. We saw very few technical glitches also because the voting early helped work that out. So in a way, this was a real powerhouse of an election that went extremely well, and the media helped with that.
Now you're bringing back my grad school days, because if I got a B plus in any grad school class, I went to the professor and said, all right, thank you for my B plus. How can I get an A? Where are the areas that we can improve? Because I'm not satisfied with this B plus. I want perfection. Where can we improve?
Well, I think now there needs to be a little more situation of where we are now. I think the media is confused about how to report on this current period for good reason. It's a difficult period that we're in. We've never had a president refuse to concede when the states look pretty clear. So I think, again, setting a denominator, even if every single legal challenge broke Trump's way, he would still not win. And just trying to calm people that it is fine to let this process play out. We have a legal process and it is correct to let it play out. But the people have spoken, they spoke in an unprecedented number. We haven't had returns like that in the last 100 years. That's great for democracy. I just think the press could do a better job now of letting the American public see that this was a real win for them, that they came out on all sides across all demographics and different kinds of voting. And they voted, they made their voice heard. It was heard. This was a very free and fair election. 2 groups of international observers that President Trump okayed have said it was a great election. So a little more of that and a little less of covering the ins and outs of a president who's having real trouble letting go.
Now, violence comes up several times in your guide. Since the civil rights movements, we're not used to broad violence after modern elections here in the US. Unfortunately, should we expect a change in that? What is the forecast?
So I think this election was also very encouraging for that. I was on a group of people monitoring traffic to look for far left violence, far right violence problems. And we did have a number of individuals. We're a nation of over 300 million people. That is not to be unexpected. But the law enforcement handled them very well. I'd say that the protesters and individuals who were mobilized on both sides handled themselves very well. And in general, this was extremely peaceful aftermath to a quite contested and hot election, which is great. And so I think that if Americans can get through the next couple of weeks of difficulty, we're actually on a glide path toward healing. And I think we need to heal. There are people who are mobilized toward anger, and they're being mobilized both by conspiracies like QAnon, by foreign adversaries, and by the media bubbles that we all live in. And we need to take a real step out of that and think that we are all in this country together. We are not having another civil war. And we need to figure out how to manage our differences and not let them further separate us, because we need our country to be governable.
We talked a lot about media accountability. What is the role of the public? Is there a media literacy aspect for this, for the public? And are there relatively simple reminders that citizens can give themselves in the process of this fragmented news cycle?
That's a terrific question. So at the National Task Force and other groups like it, we've been saying, look at credible news sources. This is hard because I have a 5-year-old. I'm trying to teach her how to do research on the internet. What is a credible source? We're motivated to find things that prove our points. And the algorithms on Facebook and so on are motivated to send us to things that further our beliefs that we already have. So it's important to get out of those bubbles, but long-standing media sources that have been around a long time are important. If you don't know where your media is coming from, be skeptical. There are foreign adversaries that are trying to plant media, and there's just people who are misinformed, frankly. They might not be intentionally problematic, but they're just passing on the stories that reinforce what they like. I remember one that came to me was about Trump's mother. This was in 2016, Trump's mother saying that she always said he should never be president. Well, you get a note like that and you think, well, what mother would, first of all, say that ahead of time about their kid? It just didn't ring true. You have to double check things that prove your point too much. So yes, there's a need for media literacy. The country that's done this best, frankly, is Finland. Finland because they were on the edge of the Soviet Union, and for so long they were targeted by the Soviets for misinformation that the body politic, the citizenry there, just got extremely good at being aware of where they were getting their news. And now America needs a little bit more of that too, a little more healthy skepticism and outreach to the other side.
Rachel, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you. It's been a real pleasure.